Hey everybody, I'm Josh Olive with Haven Comics. It's Thursday night, which means it's time for some shop talk. So stick around after this, and we have a very special show in store tonight. Really looking forward to it. We didn't keep you on hold too long, so hopefully you're all still here. Wanted to bring on real quick the man, the myth, the legend, Alan. What's happening, Alan?
You have hyped this show up for a week. And
I've been so excited for a week. We get to talk about one of my favorite comics of all time tonight, and I'm pumped about that.
But every show that I'm on is special, so you didn't have to hype it up that much.
Well, I didn't hype it up for you. I'm used
Please,
to
you know my ego is fragile.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought. Guys, we have got an extraordinarily special guest on the show tonight, and I'm very excited to bring him on. So we're not going to wait around. We're just going to go ahead and introduce him. Guys, we bring you tonight the one, the only, Mr. Ron Marz. How are you, sir? Whoop. There he is.
Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Technical difficulties, right?
Yeah, that just popped up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Especially after all those horrible things that Joe Pruitt said about you.
I was texting with Joe Pruitt literally 5 minutes ago, and it continued. Let me tell you.
I bet it did. I've seen some of the way he texts folks that he's friends with, and it's like, I wouldn't say that's somebody I hated. He's like, yeah, that's how you know I'm good friends. I'm polite to people I don't like.
He really texts people that he thinks he's friends with.
I bet he's watching right now. He's like, hey, wait a minute. Oh, so that's fantastic.
Between your technical difficulties and my technical difficulties, I didn't get to do something that I wanted to do as soon as Josh introduced you, and that was hit him with a
certified badass. Certified badass.
All right, there we go. Now we got it out of the way. I'm happy.
What a coincidence. That's my ringtone.
It should be. It should be. So for anybody who doesn't know, and I have to believe that anybody who would be watching this definitely does, but you never know. Some folks pop on and they learn things. You are a comics writer from way back. You've been doing this a really long time, and you have written some of the most seminal works for some specific characters, for sure. But you have written characters across the board: Marvel, DC, Dark Horse. You've done stuff at CrossGen, God rest its soul. You've been everywhere. You've written everything. I guess you're probably most well known for your work on Green Lantern. I would think, is that probably fair to say?
When they inscribe my tombstone, it'll say Green Lantern on it before it says anything else. Hopefully not for a while.
Hope they put your name on there first.
Hopefully, I still got a few Mets seasons in me to get a World Series. But yeah, I mean, Green Lantern.
Are you a Mets guy?
I am a Mets guy.
Wow,
that's not a Yankees guy. That's all I care about.
That's really all I cared about when I was a kid, and I picked the Mets over the Yankees, which turned out to be not a great decision. But you got to stick with it. Once you're in, you're in.
No fair weather fans. I salute you. It's hard when you're a fan of a team like the Mets or the Detroit Lions or Detroit Tigers, for that matter. That's hard. That's hard. But the folks who love it and stick with it, man, my hat's off to them.
Well, when you do win, you feel like you've earned it.
That's right. That's right. I've got a cousin who's a huge fan of the Red Sox, and she was just over the moon when they finally won and broke the curse. Yeah, that was something.
Well, I'm happy that the Mets, were able to break her heart in '86, because that's one of the few things we've got to hang our hat on.
Yeah, I mean, what's 40 years between friends, right?
Well, see, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I'm definitely going through my down times right now.
Yep, they've sort of stripped it down to the bare girders and starting over again, which is a necessary thing every once in a while.
It is, but the simple fact that they keep adding extensions to Arlie Marmel's contract is causing me to lose sleep at night, and when I do sleep, it's going to cry myself to sleep.
It's I mean, in the long run, it's the people on the field. It's not the guy in the dugout. I always feel like if you have better players, the guy in the dugout looks like a genius.
That's true.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, that's true. So we're all comic book people here, and I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but we're all suckers for an origin story. How did you get into comics? Do you actually remember the very first comic you ever read?
I don't remember the specific comic that I read that was first. I remember digging through a box, and I don't mean a long box, just like an old cardboard box of comics that my older brother had down in the basement, and it was turned out to be, pretty classic Marvel Silver Age books, early Avengers, Spider-Man, Tales of Suspense, some other odds and ends too, but mostly Marvel stuff. Kirby and Ditko and Don Heck. And I think I remember pawing through that box when I was still too young to actually read the comics. I wasn't reading yet. So, but I can remember looking at the pictures and just being sort of fascinated by being able to understand what was going on just by looking at the pictures, and also being weirded out by the Kirby artwork, by the the big square fingers, and it was Jack on FF and man, that stuff freaked me out, but I kept going back to it. It made me uncomfortable looking at it, but I kept looking at it. So
you just described my relationship with Jack Kirby when I was younger too.
I think that was everybody's. When you were a kid, you're like, man, this is weird. This makes my stomach feel weird. I don't know if I should be looking at this, but everybody has that epiphany somewhere, usually in their teenage years or early 20s, where suddenly you get it. So those were the first comics that I looked at. And then the first comics that I think I can remember buying, or, my mother buying for me, were, the typical comics off the spinner rack as a kid, like 25 and 35 cent. Mostly Marvel, some DCs, but mostly Marvel stuff, Avengers and X-Men. And I read comics pretty voraciously until, you hit 13, 14 and you discover girls and cars and, adult things. And I put comics away for, 4 or 5 years until I rediscovered them as, I was sort of heading into college. And DC's epiphany year of 1986 was a big thing for me, because it sort of pointed out that these weren't just kid stories anymore. These weren't, what I looked at in my wisdom of 17 or 18 years old. I looked at, those, Marvel and DC comics I read as a kid, those were for kids. But now this stuff, Dark Knight and Watchmen, this is for mature individuals such as myself. So that's kind of what lured me back in. And then fairly soon after college, I was writing them. So, and obviously ever since.
Now, what actually got you into writing comics?
That's what I was going to.
Jim Starlin said, "You want to write comics?" And I said, yes. That's the short version of it.
How do you find yourself in a situation where that question is posed to you by Jim
Well, you got to hang around with Jim Starlin for a while, so you got to put up with him. And I was in college, but I was part of the same social circle as Starlin and Bernie Wrightson and Terry Austin, Fred Hembeck, all the creators who lived in the Hudson Valley. In upstate New York, which is where I was from. It's where I was born and raised. So I ended up being buddies with those guys, and I copy edited. At this point, I was working at a daily newspaper while I was going to college. So I was a professional writer already at 18 or 19 or whatever I was. And I copy edited Jim's first prose novel for him. And he was that was Among Madmen, which, came out and probably is due to be reprinted, frankly. So Jim said, "Hey, do you want to try your hand at writing comics?" And the story I always tell is that it's like somebody asking you if you want to play center field for the Yankees. That's everybody says yes, but you don't actually get to do that. That's a crazy thing. But when Jim Starlin says you want to write comics, you get to write comics. So he co-wrote stuff with me for a couple of issues of Silver Surfer. Showed me the ropes of how to write a script, which is the same script method I use now, 30 plus years later. And then in short order, I was getting work on my own, and I haven't had a real job since.
That sounds like about the best possible way things could unfold for you and for people who like to read comics.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I won the lottery. I totally get that. I completely stepped in it, and thankfully I was, thankfully it was a time in the industry where they were looking to fill slots on books because everything was selling like crazy because of the speculator market.
Yep.
And man, they just needed stuff to fill around the ads. So if you were, halfway competent, you could at least get your foot in the door. And then if you were a little bit more than halfway competent, they let you stick around and do it. And frankly, I found that I could do it. I could. Writing comics is a very specific skill, and it's a very specific skill set that you have to master to be good at this, or to even be acceptable at this. You have to, you have to think visually. You have to be almost a project manager as a writer. You have to play well with others. There's a whole list of skills that come into play. But the biggest thing is I just found that I could visualize the pages in my head, even though I can't draw to save my life. I don't have an artistic bone in my body, but I can see the page in my head and describe it to somebody else. And I understand how visual storytelling works. Partially just from growing up watching movies and television and all that, but also from taking a bunch of film classes in college. I understood how a camera works, whether it's still pictures or moving pictures, and where you place the camera affects the scene, and I could communicate that in a script. And at the time I didn't realize that was a skill that a lot of people don't have.
Yep.
I teach comic writing classes on occasion, and it was a revelation to me that you not everybody can do it. Not everybody can think in pictures. And so when you teach a class where half of the class has no idea what you're talking about, you have to kind of strip it back to the bare bones and start from scratch to tell people how to do this if they don't have that visual storytelling gene already. And like I said, it was a surprise to me that not everybody could. You just assume, it's not that I'm comparing myself, but it's like Ted Williams being a hitting coach. Ted Williams says, well, just watch the ball when it comes out of the pitcher's hand and see which way the seams are tumbling to be able to hit the pitch. And, well, Ted Williams can do that because he's Ted Williams. Like, not everybody else can. But if you have that skill, you don't realize that other people don't. So I just got lucky. I was fortunate that I could, that I had an entree to do it, and that I could do it just because of the way my brain is wired.
Now, are there any particular films or directors that have influenced you when you're scripting things out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I watched all the crap that we all watched as kids, Star Trek and Planet of the Apes and all that stuff, but also David Lean movies, the big sweeping stuff like Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, a lot of classic film that I studied in film classes in college. And then, contemporary stuff, I know it became fashionable for a while to kind of dump on Spielberg because he was an emotional director and he manipulated your emotions. And like, that's the job, man. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to make you feel something.
Yeah, he's crying all the way to the bank.
So Spielberg's, visual sensibility and storytelling sensibilities are certainly in there. Plus, a bunch of contemporary, Coppola and Scorsese and all those guys, plus Orson Welles, and the usual list of the people who are really good at this. You take a little bit from each one, and then you gravitate to the ones that really resonate with you, like David Lean, like Spielberg, like Ridley Scott for me.
Ridley Scott, yeah.
So, all of those guys that I think are visual stylists who can tell a story are the ones that really kind of work for me. Somebody like, even though I like his movies a lot, somebody like Tim Burton, I feel like, he doesn't have as well developed a story sense as some of the other people. So that's why the things that he does that are adaptations of stories tend to be better than something that, he gets a hold of originally. I think he's a terrific visual director, and he's gotten much better at it over the years. But he was never a guy that I was like, oh, that's my guy, because I didn't feel like the story sensibility was there like it is in somebody like Ridley Scott or Spielberg.
Kane's got a long question here on the screen, but about how you write out dialogue or how you plan out dialogue.
I break down my scripts visually first. It doesn't make sense for me the other way. I know there are writers who do dialogue first and then fill in the visuals. That's a totally foreign way for me to think about it. I want to understand how the story is being told visually, and with dialogue notes, with a sensibility of what's happening in the panels. But I break it down visually first and make sure that all works, and then I go back in and fill in the dialogue. Then when the pages are drawn, I go back in again and rewrite all the dialogue to fit what's on the page rather than what I thought was going to be on the page, because that extra step of polishing the dialogue to match what's actually there rather than what you assumed would be there is, turns into a much better comic. So I feel like if you write dialogue first, you end up with very talky comics. A lot of people standing around and talking. And I mean, if that's your thing, fine, but that's not why I look at comics. I don't look at comics for people sitting on a couch having a conversation. I want to look at something. I want something visually exciting on the page. And that's personal choice. So that's a personal choice as a reader and as a writer both. But to me, that's, if I open a comic and it's 6 pages of people talking, I'm out. Like, I want to see something cool.
I'm kind of with you. I can't imagine. In my head, it makes perfect sense to visualize a scenario or a plot or what have you. Here's what's happening. And then how do the people that are involved in this, how do they respond to that? So that would drive what they say, how they communicate back and forth to each other, rather than the other way around. That makes a lot more sense to me. But then I just discovered in the past week or two that there are people on this planet who do not have an interior monologue. I just discovered, and I'm like, how do you operate without that?
Yeah, it's,
who do you talk to?
I feel like to a certain extent, it's like being colorblind. Like, if you're colorblind, you don't know what it's like to see with the full color spectrum. That's just the way it is for you. So however your brain works is however your brain works. And I read a psychology article actually a number of years ago that talked about how people's visual imaginations worked, and that not everybody sees things the same way. And
sure,
and, from if you say apple, I pictured a very specific, very realistic looking apple, like a basically a photograph of an apple, of a real apple. And some people see, the outline of an apple, and some people see a cartoon version of an apple, and some people don't see an apple at all. Like, and the fact that not everybody could see what I see was completely mind-blowing to me. Having done this job for a long time, you come to, and you have that sort of revelation. You go, oh shit, how does this work for other people? Because all I've got is, the only vantage point I have is where I'm looking from. So you come to the conclusion that other people don't have the same set of eyes, the same set of visual acuity. So it, that was a moment of, really, that's the way it works. Like, if I say apple, the guy next to me might be thinking of a cartoon apple. It's just, you just sort of go, oh, I should have thought of that, but I never did.
So before you get to the fringe cases of people, like a friend of mine, his daughter has synesthesia. And so when she hears music, she sees colors.
Which,
like, she visually sees colors. And
it's
just bizarre. It's amazing, but bizarre.
We're all wired differently, far differently. But we all respond to, one of the things I say in my comic class is that we've been telling stories with pictures ever since we were living in caves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cave paintings are the first comics.
Group on the wall. That's right.
So we as a species tell stories with pictures. And I think we do it now more often, and more to greater extent than ever before because
mm-hmm.
Of TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and we are a greatly visually literate society. So the fact that the rest of society kind of caught up with comics is not surprising. We were just ahead of the curve.
Do you think that this is just a hypothetical? Obviously, we can't prove anything, but do you think that the way people's brains process visual information has changed since the invention of cinema and movies and film? And we all process so much of that we have an ingrained thought of what things should look like when we run those movies in our heads?
I think probably so. And again, I'm just a guy who sits at a desk and makes up stuff, so I don't know nothing. But I think we probably process visual information much more quickly now than we used to as a species. And I think that's one of the reasons that sort of the long, languid pacing of movies from 50 years ago seems slow to us now. And the lack of quick cuts and all of the visual stimulation coming at you all the time is where we are now. So when you go back and look at something like Citizen Kane with those long tracking shots and everything, it seems almost quaint to modern eyes. But when that stuff happened initially, it blew people's brains because that's not what they were used to seeing.
Yeah. We have a question from the Peanut Gallery here. How did Batman Aliens come about? Because it seems like a weird combo, but it worked out well.
Well, honestly, Batman sells better than anything else, so that's part of it.
That'll do it.
But the idea actually came from me and Bernie Wrightson driving back from, I think, New York City. Maybe it was after a convention. Maybe we were just down there to, knock around town. But we were kind of casting about for something we could work on together, because at that point I lived a mile down the road from Bernie, and we were hanging out all the time. And he suggested Batman Aliens, and I went, man, that'd be cool. That's never going to happen, but that'd be cool. And he said, well, you never know. We might as well ask. So Bernie called Dark Horse to run the idea past him. And then we called DC to say, hey, we said this, we mentioned this to Dark Horse, and in never thinking that this was actually a possibility, because you had to get Dark Horse and DC aligned and 20th Century Fox aligned, and everybody's got to kind of sign off on it. But about a week later, we got a call and they said, that sounds cool, let's do it. And then we realized, oh shit, we don't actually have a story. We just
like the idea.
We just have a title. We have Batman versus Aliens.
Well, you got to say, when Ron Mars and Bernie Wrightson come and tell you, hey, we got something cool, you'd be an idiot not to listen to that.
Well, we got away with it. But ultimately, we just kind of sat around in Bernie's studio and kicked around ideas for what it was going to be, and what the story was going to be. And a large part of it was me asking Bernie what he wanted to draw and what he didn't want to draw. And what he didn't want to draw was cars and buildings. So Gotham City was out. And that's how it ended up being, in the Yucatan, in the jungle, in ruins, underground, so that Bernie didn't have to get out a ruler and do a bunch of straight edge buildings and stuff like that. So it was all very organic, because that's what Bernie wanted to draw. And obviously that's what he was, he was gifted at drawing everything, but that was right up his alley. And I had actually been in the Yucatan, knocking around the ruins and doing stupid stuff I probably shouldn't have been doing as a young man, with Jim Starlin. So all of those Mayan ruins and what it was like to actually be in the jungle, and sort of in the middle of nowhere, all of that was very, very fresh to me. That was all very real to me because I had done it. We didn't have aliens around, as far as I know, but a lot of the other stuff that's in the story, I kind of experienced that stuff. So, wasn't exactly right what but it was certainly right where you've been.
Yeah, that helps. That helps.
So I did want to ask you about character development for just a moment. And it was, I don't know if this quote is actually real or not. It might have been from an interview or something, but it does go back to Kyle Rayner's girlfriend. And you had apparently said in an interview or something that you had designed and thought of that character specifically to kill that character off to give her death meaning.
Well, Alex was designed. We knew that she was going to end up paying the price for Kyle's immaturity and naivete and being cavalier with this vast power that he had received. So it was she was going to end up not surviving, in my mind, from the beginning.
Not dissimilar from Uncle Ben in that respect, right?
Well, it was really an Uncle Ben moment, right? It was with great power comes great responsibility. And when you have great power and you don't exercise responsibility, it's not you that pays the price, it's someone close to you. So in my mind, it was very much a Uncle Ben moment. In retrospect, it's just as much of a Gwen Stacy moment, which is, the girlfriend pays the price. And I knew what had happened to Gwen Stacy years ago, but I don't think I'd ever read that story at that point. So it didn't occur to me that it was a Gwen Stacy moment, because I was thinking of Uncle Ben. That doesn't mean that the criticism and everything that came after it isn't valid. It certainly is. But that was not in our minds from the beginning. It was an Uncle Ben moment, and the person that he was closest to was his girlfriend, who was frankly a better person than he was, and that was part of the goal in creating her, was to make sure that the audience liked her better than they liked him. He was kind of a jerk at the beginning.
Now, when you spend the time developing a character like that, and you want the death to mean something, have you ever done that to another character, and you get to the point where you're getting ready to kill them off, but then you're like, no, I kind of like this character, I'm going to keep them around? Does that ever play into it? Or when you go into it knowing that you're going to kill them, is that like the final decision, that character dies?
I think I don't think I've ever spared a character because I ended up liking them more than I thought I would. I think that the story and the characters kind of tell you what needs to happen and what feels right. So I don't think I've ever spared anybody, but I've also written character deaths that nobody paid attention to. because they didn't care. Like the audience didn't care. I had written the when I wrote Witchblade, Sarah Pazzini's partner, Jake McCarthy, I think, I can't even remember his name. We eventually killed him off because I didn't think a whole lot of his. I don't think he had been developed great as a character, and I thought, well, let me bring in somebody else to fill that role. So we literally had him thrown off the Empire State Building, and nothing. Nobody gave a shit.
Was that a metaphor for just throwing that character away?
So it's if you write a character death and nobody cares, you have failed at your job. If it's not upsetting to the audience, you shouldn't have bothered to do it. So particularly when you have created the character and nurtured that character, a character death is supposed to hurt. It's supposed to be upsetting. And I know there's a great deal of discussion about what happens to when bad things happen to good characters, and it's all it's all still a valid discussion to have. But look, Romeo and Juliet kind of sucks if those kids don't get killed, right? If those kids don't die, there's not much of a story. So I think we as storytellers and we as as the audience have to reserve the right for bad things to happen to characters that you like, because otherwise it goes back to that emotional moment that you want to get out of the audience. If the audience just feels like everybody's safe and nothing bad is going to happen, why show up?
My wife refuses to ever watch the Serenity movie again because of the way that Wash gets killed. It impacted her so hard. These many years later, she's like, if I'm watching it, she like leaves the room.
Yeah,
she's not going to watch it.
You're talking to somebody who cries every time I watch Iron Giant. So
how can you not have a soul?
That's, to me, that's the height of art. That's the height of why we do this job is to, that's just, painting pixels. And frankly, it's just a robot. But when he says Superman, I mean,
you didn't have to say it. You didn't have to remind me of the scene.
I think you did.
Yeah, so it's a I think it's, you have a responsibility as a storyteller to if you're going to do that stuff, if you are going to kill off a character or do something drastic, and it should hurt. It's supposed to hurt. And I know it's comics, and everybody comes back from the dead. Even Bucky comes back from the dead.
Still a little bit bitter about that one.
But it's still, it's still got to mean something. It's still got to hurt.
So Kane asks, do you have any dream property or IP that you would want to do a comic book adaptation for?
I have been very fortunate to play with most of the toys in the toy box, the Marvel, DC, Conan, Star Wars, all of that stuff. And I would, I happily still doing all of that stuff. My answer to this is usually I'm a big Tarzan fan, and I would love to do more Tarzan because that was a big thing for me as a kid, both the movies and the original novels. Yep. And the other thing I think I want to do, just to scratch the itch, is Star Trek. I've never written Star Trek at all. So somewhere, somehow, an original Trek series story would be great to kind of check off the bucket list.
Did it in a particular Star Trek era? Original series, next gen, DS9?
It's original series for me. I mean, that's,
okay.
I grew up watching that every night, 6:00, Channel 11 out of New York City. That was the ritual. And it obviously that had a big effect on me as a kid, and a big effect on making me want to do what I do for a living now. So Kirk, Spock, McCoy would all be great. I appreciate the other Star Trek stuff, but not as much as I think you never appreciate anything else more than the things that you loved when you were 12.
I could not agree more. I think that's
that is
right.
Gospel truth right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the stuff you loved at 12 sucks.
Oh, like, yeah. You just love it all the more.
And in retrospect, you look at it and go, "Oh man, looking at that stuff through adult eyes, man, what was I thinking?" But you can't help it. You love it.
So I know this is kind of like asking you to name which one of your kids is your favorite, but Steve wants to know, what's your favorite storyline or character arc that you've done so far? Do you have one that stands out?
It is like picking between your kids.
It's okay. You can say Samurai Heaven and Earth. That's okay.
Well, there's two families when you have to pick between your kids. There's the adopted kids, which are, the company-owned work that you do, the work for hire stuff, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, all of that stuff, and I've enjoyed the vast majority of what I've done. I loved writing Superman whenever I got a chance to do it. The Superman story I did with Doc Shaner is one of my favorite things ever, because frankly, it's Superman meets the Iron Giant. I did a Daredevil story in black and white at Marvel, which is one of my favorite things as well. And then the other branch of the family is the creator-owned stuff, the things that didn't exist before you brought it into the world, and those are always a little bit more special than the work for hire, which you have to put back on the shelf when you're done with them. And of the creator-owned things I've done and am still doing, the answer is Samurai Heaven and Earth, because it's probably my favorite thing I've ever written.
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite comics of all time. It's a perfect story. It's so much fun, but there's so much on the line as you're going through it. And then Luke Ross, who is a phenomenal artist, turned in some of the best artwork of his life. It's one of the early panels where Hero comes in and he's kneeling, and you've got all the rest of these guys sitting in there. Just the perspective of that shot. I don't know how long it took him to work that out, but it was immaculate. For anybody who hasn't read it, it was published by Dark Horse, if I'm remembering right.
Yep.
And what a story. So this young warrior, feudal Japan, comes back, and everybody at the castle is dead, gone. The woman he loves has been taken, so he goes across the world to look for her. And so you have, and I imagine in my head, and you can tell me if this is right or not, somewhere in your brain you had this thought of, what if you had this Japanese shogun warrior kind of guy fighting the Three Musketeers in Paris? Because that happens in the book, and it's everything you could ever hope to see.
That was the nugget. That was the thing that most stories start out as a nugget, a seed that you have that gets caught in your brain, and you can't get rid of it. So you have to build it. You have to build it out and get it out of your brain, and that's what Samurai Heaven and Earth was. I had, and some of the roots of Samurai Heaven and Earth are in CrossGen, because CrossGen was coming to an end before we actually started working on it.
Yep.
CrossGen is where I met Luke Ross. Luke had come up and worked in the studio for 3 or 4 months from Brazil. And, we just got to be buddies. We worked on some stuff together. And when CrossGen fell apart, I went back. We all went back to freelance, because that was, those were the jobs that were there. So I ended up coming back to Green Lantern and doing 6 issues with Luke there, which I still like those issues a lot. But at the same time, we were working on what became Samurai Heaven and Earth, which was kind of inspired by working on The Path, which was a samurai book that we did at CrossGen.
Beautiful book. Bart Sears, real heavy, inky, black and white kind of art there.
Yeah, very chiaroscuro. So Bart did the first 12 issues, and Matthew Dow Smith did the next almost 10 or 12 issues before the whole thing fell apart. So I love samurai movies. I love Kurosawa. I love the samurai visuals. You just got to find an artist crazy enough to draw that stuff, because it's obviously very intricate and very detailed and very time consuming. But Luke was up for it. And decided to draw it to be reproduced from his pencils, because he wanted that sort of soft pencil look to it. I'm
not gonna lie, I've been trying to buy one of the pages from that comic for years, and the guy he had representing him and selling his art didn't take credit cards at the time, and then he started to. And I've still got the emails where I was like, I would like to purchase these pages, please. And he's like, cool, yes, but that never happened. And so I still have regret in my heart that I do not own some of those pages. It hurts me. Very
shockingly, art dealers are a superstitious and cowardly lot in many ways. I have a number of Samurai Heaven and Earth pages that Luke gave me, would not sell to me, and I've got the pitch piece, which is a sort of a Drew Struzan montage with the samurai and the musketeers and his lady love and the villains. So that's hanging on my wall, like literally right here, and then just above it is. There's a splash page, the splash page that ends issue 4, where the samurai hero has climbed up the walls of Versailles and looks in and sees her.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that splash page hanging on my wall, and it's been hanging there. It's been hanging there ever since Luke drew it.
Just absolutely stunning. And the fact that then you came out with a sequel to that made me really happy too, because I thought that was just great. And I kind of had the impression that maybe there might be more stories coming.
There's a third miniseries that we actually did the covers for. And the first issue's written. It's been written for 20 years. It's so the third series was going to the second miniseries takes place to a great extent in the Middle East and Egypt. So there's a lot of
that seemed like that was just letting Luke Ross play with the visuals of the sands and the like Temple of Karnak kind of the ruins and all that.
Luke was into it, and a lot of the visual inspiration was from an artist named David Roberts, who was a Scottish artist that went to the Middle East in the early 1800s and drew these amazing paintings and sketches and all this stuff. And so I had been a fan of his work since I first saw it. And like that was to a great extent the inspiration for that second miniseries. And then the third miniseries, I was going to say would have taken place, but still is going to take place. We still got to get to it in the Caribbean. And much like
with pirates, please tell me pirates.
Yeah, it's pirates.
Yes,
it's pirates, and we don't have to fudge the dates too much to get it into the golden age of piracy, and for there to be both characters from Treasure Island as well as historical pirates. So the story's planned out. We just have to find time to do it, find time in Luke's schedule to draw it. But we still both want to do it. And frankly, the advent of, because we have the rights back. It's no longer
okay, fantastic.
Dark Horse has no part of it, because when the trade paperbacks went out of print,
which breaks my heart, because I sold my last ones like 3 months ago, and I just can't get any more.
I think eBay is going to have to be your friend. But so when the books went out of print, the rights returned to us. So we own it. We can do whatever we want with it, take it wherever we want. So at some point, I don't know when, but it will still happen. The 5 covers are done. First might even be colored. The first issue's written. So we will get back to it. We just gotta pry Luke away from the Star Wars group.
Yeah. See, for anybody who has not read Samurai Heaven and Earth, it's serious, like grown-up storytelling. It's not just, hey, let's put these things together and see what happens. It's phenomenal storytelling that has this element of, we're going to put these things together that you never thought would ever go together, and we're going to see what happens and see how that works. And you get these visual juxtapositions that are just spectacular, and the story is amazing. The art is phenomenal. One of my favorite comics of all time.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's one of those things where it's the right people working with each other, and editorially, Dark Horse just stayed out of our hair, let us do whatever we want. And although at times when I might have had a question on which way I wanted the story to go, or some visuals or something like that, the editor, Dave Land, who was actually not in comics anymore, was a great sounding board, and he was whatever we needed him to be at the time. And sometimes we needed him to just stay the hell out of our hair, and sometimes we needed him to nudge the process along. So it's one of the times in your career when everything aligns and everything comes out exactly the way you want it to. And every page in that is exactly what we want it to be. And that's not something you get to say very often, because this is a monthly process, and it's a bit of an assembly line process. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're playing with characters that are not yours, you don't have the final say. So when you do get to have the final say and it comes out like you wanted to, it's pretty spectacular.
Well, we have some questions here from the Peanut Gallery, and I'm going to take them a little bit out of order because this one strikes me as awesome. I love this question. If one of your comics could be made into the perfect movie adaptation, which one would you choose? And also, which one just to become a weird, campy cult favorite? I love that addendum.
The movie adaptation is Samurai Heaven and Earth. I think it would be. It's a worthwhile adventure, and I love those sorts of adventure movies. The classic Richard Lester Three Musketeers from the 70s are some of my favorite movies, and that's what the Three Musketeers in the series are basically modeled on. Man in the Iron Mask, Count of Monte Cristo, that kind of stuff. I ate that up as a kid, as an adult. So that's the answer. I think the campy cult thing is maybe another sort of semi-samurai thing, which is Shinku, which is an image book I did with Lee Moder, which is about a vampire hunting modern day samurai in Tokyo. And it's blood and nudity and swearing and all the things you expect from a vampire movie. So that's probably the cult classic version.
There's a little bit of nudity in Samurai Heaven and Earth too.
Not
a ton, but there's a little bit.
Yes, there is.
So don't buy it for your kids. But
and honestly, Dark Horse was like, do we really need this? Because this affects how it affects how some stores might order it. And I went, yeah, we need it. And that was the end of the discussion, because it was we owned it. It was our thing, and they went, okay. So that was the end of it.
Yeah, what a perfect story, and phenomenal story, perfect artwork. It's just a pitch perfect thing that you have put out into the world, and I absolutely love it. It's out of print at the moment, folks, so hie thee to eBay. Go find it. Samurai Heaven and Earth, Volume 1, Volume 2. Pick up both of them because you're going to want them both. And if you've not read it, get on it, and then we can all start to pressure him into getting with Luke Ross and finishing it up with that Volume 3. Because I really want to see Hero and Pirates. I just want to see that. And Hero's the name of the character, Hiro. So we're not talking about just generic Hero. And then Daniel Major has a question here too. Yeah.
Yeah, Daniel Major's question is, how much preparation in terms of history of a character do you do before you start writing an established character? Do you spend time doing research or get a general idea and run with it?
I do enough research to make you guys think I did a lot of research.
That's a me answer.
Yeah, I'm not, like, I don't want to tell stories about other stories. To me, that's not the job. Your job is to come up with something new and different. So I know there are writers who go back and, if they're gonna take on Moon Knight or Booster Gold, they go back and read every appearance of that character, and that's not at all my method. And I think that's I'm not going to go back and read every damn story of a character in order to write it. I should be familiar enough in the first place with a character to have some sense of what I think works about the character. And then I'll read some stuff to, maybe get a sense or get some specifics, but I'm not, if you want a story about what happens between, panels 3 and 4 on page 17 of 2 issues of Avengers from 25 years ago, I ain't your guy. Like, that's not what I'm interested in as a storyteller. I realize that there are some writers who are exactly interested in that, and some audience members that are exactly interested in that, and that's fine. But it's just not a flavor that is of interest to me as a reader or a writer. So I'll do enough research that I know what I'm talking about, but I'm certainly not going to go back and read canon, because the entire canon of a character, because I think that becomes paralysis by analysis. It's just, it's, after a while, it's too much, and you're just trying to support the weight of 40 years of stories rather than trying to find a new path for it.
All right,
this is a great question.
Yeah, with you being one of my favorite writers, have you ever worked with one of my favorite artists, Mike Grell? A Tarzan collaboration between you two would be awesome.
I did a convention panel with Mike, but I don't think that's probably what you mean. I've never actually worked with Mike, but his stuff is huge in my youth. I love his Tarzan. I mean, I would crawl across broken glass to write Tarzan for Mike Grell. I do have a Tarzan page, a Tarzan original that a friend gave me by Mike Grell. So I do have a Tarzan original in a original art portfolio. But like Mike's John Sable Freelance that is now being reprinted in hardcover Kickstarter projects. I mean, I back those immediately as soon as the next one is released. John Sable was a big thing for me when I started reading comics again. John Sable, Nexus, American Flag, and Grimjack from First Comics were all like,
man, that is quite a lineup you just listed off there.
Yeah, they were all touchstone books for me when I sort of rediscovered comics, and those comics were coming out sort of at the height of their power and popularity. So I'm buying they're sitting back there on the floor somewhere. I'm buying those John Sable hardcovers, but I've still got all my original issues.
Now, there's something about having those hardcovers. It's just nice to pull them off the shelf and thumb through them. I feel the same way. I do the same thing.
They're permanent, and also Mike's getting the money. I mean, that's right. To me, it's a worthy reward for somebody who has put in that many years of work in this business, and it's still, it's great material. It's I think it's probably along with Longbow Hunters, I think it's the best stuff that Mike ever did.
It was such a great concept, and I thought he just did a great job with it. I love Mike Grell. We had a convention, our local convention here in Huntsville. Mike was the first 2 comic guests that they ever had were Mike Grell and Chris Claremont. So not a bad way to start, right? But my booth was right next to Mike Grill's, and for my store, I made no money that whole week because I was just talking to him the whole time, and I was happy as a lark. I couldn't care less. I actually started a thing where I asked him how he came up with his signature, because he's got a really unique signature that's just really visually really cool, right? And I asked him how he came up with it, and he just grabbed a Sharpie, and the tables that they had were set up with these plasticized tablecloths on them. And he just wrote his name in block letters. And he's like, this is how I used to sign my name. And people said, you're an artist. You're supposed to do better than that. And he's like, what do you think I should do? And they said, I don't know. Just add some other lines to it or something. He said, like what? Like this? And they're like, yeah, like that. And he's like, oh, that does look pretty cool.
Well, you have to. One of the first things that Starlin taught me was that your autograph needs to be different than your signature.
Recognizable and different from your signature. That's right.
And I was like, well, why is that? He's like, do you sign checks with? This is back in the day of signing checks. Like,
sure.
Did you sign your mortgage application with your signature? Yeah. Do you want somebody having that on a book? So yeah, my signature and my autograph are two entirely different things.
Well, I told Mike Grell when I said, if that tablecloth is still here at the end of this show, I'm stealing it. And he just laughed. Well, at the end of the show, he's walking out the door. He's got his little suitcase on wheels with all this stuff in it. And he's walking out the door, and I'm going around my booth to come over to his booth to get that tablecloth. And he stops in the door, and he turns around, and he catches me. He's like, were you serious about that? And I'm like, yeah. And so he said, okay. And he came over and drew that little profile view of Green Arrow that he does, right? It's just his super quick thing. And ever since then, every comic book guest that we've had come to the show has done a sketch on there or signed that tablecloth. And that thing is huge now.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, I think I've been in shops where, like the bathroom is full of sketches on the wall and stuff. I always think those things are, those are artifacts that are kind of irreplaceable.
Yeah, well, if we're ever lucky enough to get you down here to the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo, which went from that small show there to, God, it's like 30,000 people now. If we're ever lucky enough to get you down here, I will have you sign something on there, or tempt fate and draw something on there, which I love getting writers to draw, because that's one of my favorite things.
That's always a ticking time bomb. But I think Alabama is actually one of the few states I have not visited. I don't think I've ever even driven through Alabama. So we gotta check that off the list at some point.
We would love to have you come out to that show, and I'm good friends with the guy that owns the show, so we'll be in touch on that point if you're amenable. The reason I went off camera a minute ago is I looked over and I saw something on the shelf and thought, I wonder when was the last time he saw something like that. I have this.
Oh yeah.
Both copies. It's still on my shelf.
It was we actually, the writers, or me specifically, kind of art directed those things.
Well, the glare is something awful.
It was the first link in a long chain of events that we decided we were going to do those. So those were called motion comics at the time, and they're on DVDs.
Yeah.
And it utilized the artwork from the issues, but was sort of pan and scan, kind of like Ken Burns' Civil War documentary that uses photographs, but the camera moves over the photographs, and there's a sense of motion to it. So it ended up on my desk to kind of figure out how we were going to make these things be a little bit more visual and motion oriented.
Your background in film came in handy there, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean ultimately, I don't love when comic book panels get animated and they just make somebody's arm move like this, and it's just, that stuff always looks weird and wonky to me, because I love comic art so much that, like, I don't need the bells and whistles. Just show me a cool panel by Butch Guice. That's all I need. I don't need the the background moving around or something like that. So so we did that. We did that at CrossGen, and then we worked with a studio in Chicago that it was basically a game studio. It was a smaller video game studio that took on the assignment of doing the pan and scan and making the word balloons pop up and doing the voice recordings and stuff like that. And that was where I met a guy who's one of my best friends now, David Rodriguez, who worked at the video game company, and that's where we had run into each other. We'd also run into each other at the Chicago Wizard World convention when he just came up as a fan, and I signed some stuff. But flew up to Chicago and worked with those guys for a few days to kind of get the process moving. And then, Dave and I just stayed in touch, and now we work together on the same narrative team at Blizzard, writing Diablo, the video game. So, that's how this business is. That's how this business works. Is you meet somebody, and 25 years later, you go to lunch together every day because you're working on the same project. It's just links in a chain, and if one of those links didn't happen, things would have taken a completely different turn. Like if I didn't know Dave, Blizzard never would have contacted me to come work on the video game. And it's opportunities arise because you met a guy who knows this other guy, and it's just again, it's not who you know, but it's to a certain extent who you've met. And
now, what are the differences between scripting a comic book and scripting a video game?
Video games pays better.
Okay,
I believe that.
Ultimately it's the same gig. They're both visual storytelling, and your job as a writer is largely to convey the story through dialogue. So video games and comics and film and TV are all sort of bastard cousins because it's the same gig. It's the same gig, but it's a different flavor, and you have much different responsibilities in a video game than you do in a comic. In a comic, I am working with 3 or 4 or 5 other people, and that's it. It's an artist, a colorist, a letterer, an editor. It's a very small ecosystem. We just got done with Darryl Banks, and I did a new Kyle story for Green Lantern 600, and it was
coming out in like 3 weeks, people.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's me, Darryl, who did pencils and inks, colorist, and the letterer, and the editor. So 5 people. That's it. That's the only people that touch that story in any way. On a video game, you're working with hundreds of other people, many of whom you don't interact with on a daily basis, many of whom you don't even meet. So it's a large project, and you are doing your bit of it. You do your thing so people can do their other thing, and then those people do their thing, and it comes back to you, and you do your thing again, and it's a much larger scale process. It's you and 500 of your best friends rather than you and 5 people. The job is still the same. You have less, I think, sense of ownership of a video game. And I've worked on a number of them. I'm part of the Diablo narrative team now, but I've worked on like 10 or 12 different video games. So your sense of ownership is different because it's the comic is kind of yours. Like you and a few other people, it's yours. The video game is ours. The video game is everybody pulling in the same direction to make the thing work. And especially on a large scale AAA video game like Diablo, it's a lot of people, and it's a long development time. It's years to make the thing. And in a comic, it's a single issue comic. If it's 20 pages, you kind of do that in a month or two, and then and a month later it's out in the stands. It's very immediate gratification for the for the creative team. You do the thing and it's out, and then you do the thing again, and you just keep churning them out. Video games is a lot longer gestation. And I enjoy them both immensely. And I'm pleased to be doing them both. The skills are this. There's a lot of crossover in that Venn diagram of skills, but it's not a single circle. You do different things in each one. And obviously the video, like in the comic, I and the rest of the creative team are the god of that world. Whatever we say happens. That's the allure. If we say the samurai finds his girlfriend in the Palace of Versailles and fights the Three Musketeers, that's what happens. In a video game where there's hundreds of people working on it, and there is a player who will eventually decide how they're going to play that game and how they're going to interact with the game, you're not the god of that universe. You are part of it, but you don't have the final say like you do in a comic.
Yeah, I think about 4 or 5 years late, but I'm finally playing Elden Ring, and I didn't realize that J.R.R. Martin wrote Elden Ring.
George R.R. Martin.
Yeah, George R.R. Martin. I didn't realize he wrote it, and that is a game that pisses me off on a nightly basis. Do you take any type of satisfaction knowing that you're probably pissing gamers off somewhere?
Well,
in a good way.
In games, comics, somebody's always pissed off. If you didn't piss somebody off, you didn't do your job well.
True
that. We're supposed to have a reaction to it, but there's no satisfaction in it. You want everybody to enjoy, what you do, but you are also, not everything is for everybody.
Well, you have to understand what Alan means by being pissed off about it too, right? What Alan means is, I wanted to do this thing so bad, and then this other thing happened, and oh my God, that was so cool, and I'm mad because I don't have time to play it for another 8 hours tonight. That's what Alan means.
Yeah,
that's you get to the end of a really good comic book with a big twist or a reveal, and he just throws it across the room. He's like, because now I have to wait another month to read the next issue.
Well, that's that's when we feel like we did our job, right? When you get to that last page and it's a good cliffhanger, and you're like, oh my God, I need the next one. That's satisfying.
I think that all of y'all are insensitive jerks for not putting these out more than once a month.
Well,
it takes a while to make them,
Don't blame me. Blame the artist. Honestly, the fact that we do put them out once a month is insane. Like the level of work that goes into comics now compared to 40 years ago, in terms of the production and the artwork and the level of detail and all of that is just insane. But we're the industry is built on a monthly model, which you obviously know. So it's virtually impossible to draw a comic in a month. It's the math doesn't math for the most part. When we were at CrossGen, we didn't miss shipping for like 3 years from the start. And the only reason we did miss shipping eventually is because they didn't pay the printer bill and they held it back for a week. Was when financial troubles started to catch up. But the model that we built at CrossGen was that the creative team that was in-house would do 10 issues a year, and there would be 2 issues a year
fill-in artists
by other people, because that's the only way the math worked. If you have a 5-day-a-week schedule, and an artist does 5 days, does 5 pages a week, and the comics then were 22 pages plus a cover, eventually that catches up with you, and you can't get the schedule done. You can't maintain a steady schedule. So
you can never get sick, right?
So yeah, you can't
never go to your friend's wedding. I mean,
you can't take a vacation. That's why most comics now don't really have a steady art team, and I think to the detriment of the business.
Agreed.
Just because logistically it's impossible. When I was when I was on Green Lantern, and I was on Green Lantern for 7 years, one of the things that early on I sort of stamped my feet and said we got to do this was that we needed a second regular art team, because Daryl could do about 4 pages a week. On a good week, he could do 4.5, but it was just he was not going to be able to do 5. It was just too much. So for quite a while, Daryl and Paul Pelletier switched on and off on issues of Green Lantern.
It's funny you should mention Paul Pelletier, because I was about to mention G.I. Joe is doing that exact same thing right now, very smartly. Chris Mooneyham does one 6 or 7 issue story arc, and then Paul Pelletier does the next 5 or 6 issue story arc. And I think more so than Chris, Paul has modified his art a little bit to be more, because Chris has a more stylized approach to it. So Paul has modified his art a little bit to be closer to that. So it's really seamless for the reader. Yeah, well, that's happening, but they're switching off, and it's really created a fantastic rhythm for the book.
That's the way I mean, Paul's still one of my best buddies. We talk fairly often, and
I would dearly love to have him on here, because I learned of his art in Negation when he was doing Negation. I was like, who is this dude? He's amazing. And then I have followed him ever since. Yeah,
it's like Paul is like the bastard child of John Byrne and Alan Davis.
Yeah, that's about as good a way I've ever heard of anybody being described, and that's phenomenal.
And Paul is great. He's a workhorse. He's a machine. He can get the pages done. But again, nobody draws 12 issues a year anymore. Maybe John Romita Jr., maybe Mark Bagley.
Well,
but that's it. So what we did on Green Lantern was to make sure, there were enough other projects in the franchise, miniseries, annual, special, one shot, or something like that there was always enough work for 2 pencilers. So Daryl and Paul just switched back and forth, and it became incumbent upon the editor to kind of sort out who was doing what, with suggestion from me to all right, let's get, Daryl will draw these 4 issues, and then Paul will draw these 3 issues, and while then Daryl comes back and Paul will go off and draw this miniseries. So it ends, as the writer, it ends up in your court to make sure that both of those guys are working. And sometimes that means writing stuff out of order. It means, if Daryl's drawing issue 64, you might have to skip ahead and write issue 67 for Paul to start on, so that he's not left without anything to do. That's a lot of
mental juggling.
Yeah, it's a lot of you sort of have to. I mean, you kind of got to know your shit, right? That's you have to understand the writer's job and where the story is going and all that stuff. But that's part of it. That's what's required, because one of the writer's jobs, in addition to just doing the story, is to make sure that everybody else down the chain has work in front of them. The writer's cardinal sin is to leave the artist with nothing to do for 2 weeks. I mean, because the artist has got to, pay his bills just like you do. So your job is to make sure that there are pages on that guy's table or on that artist's table at all times.
Well, I know we're coming up on the end of your time, and I want to be really respectful of that. And I have one question I always like to ask folks, because I figure you guys get asked the same questions by schmucks like us a lot. And we appreciate that you're so patient in answering them. And this is one that so far I don't think probably gets asked of a great many people. So I challenge you with this question. What is the weirdest experience you have ever had at a Comic-Con?
Oh, man. We're going to need a lot of time for this.
We've heard some humdinger stories, I'll tell you that.
There's a couple I can't repeat because they're not salacious, but weird.
Well, we won't tell anybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, and embarrassed. There's nobody watching, right?
Did anybody ever come up to your table and ask to buy one of your socks?
No.
Ask Joe Pruitt about that.
But I'm trying to, I've been doing this a while, so, I've done shows everywhere. Like I just got back from India a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to South Africa next month, and so I've been to places that are I've been to places that aren't Huntsville, Alabama.
India. We have our own special brand of weird here.
Every place does, but every place does, but also every place is the same. Like the people are the same. It does not matter like where you are in the world. The nerd tribe is the same, man. It's Indian nerds, nerds from Kenya, nerds from New Zealand, nerds from Middle America. We're all the same tribe, and it's that's been a really cool thing for me to experience in so many different places around the world. Is that, man, we're all just the same, and it does not matter what language you're speaking or what where you've grown up. There's the love for this stuff is universal. I think even more universal now because of the reach of especially the Marvel movies. I was in Nairobi, Kenya for a show a number of years ago, like 5 years ago now, maybe 6. And there was a guy at the show, and like, look, you're the Westerner at the show, so everybody wants to talk to you, and what's it like to work for Western publishers and Marvel and DC Comics. And so there was a guy walked past the table wearing a Thanos t-shirt. Thanos t-shirt drawn by Jim Starlin. This image of Thanos from one of the early appearances of Thanos kind of standing there like this, and I was just struck by how, like, I'm literally on the other side of the world. I am in East Africa. I am about as far away from where I grew up and what is familiar to me as I can get. And like, there's a dude wearing a Thanos t-shirt. And a few years before that, nobody knew who the hell Thanos was at all. Nobody had ever heard of him because it hadn't hit the movies yet. I'm like, there's a guy on the other side of the world wearing a Thanos t-shirt drawn by one of my best friends and the guy who got me into comics. It all sort of comes full circle. And you realize that this really, there's a language that we all share no matter where you are. But that's not the weird story.
It's not. I was going to give you props for very diplomatically avoiding the question. No, that's the way a politician would do it. That was brilliant.
I've got a lot of weird stories. I'm trying to think of which one. All right. There's two main ones. So I'll give you the one that was the weirder experience. Like 20 some years ago, I was at San Diego and and I was out to dinner with a friend at the PF Chang's at Horton Plaza. Horton Plaza is no longer there. Was a multi-level shopping mall that's now been knocked down and is long gone. But I was sitting outside at Horton Plaza. We had ordered food, and just Sunday at San Diego, everybody's dead. Everybody is just drained completely. And I'm sitting there and having a beer and waiting on our appetizers with a friend, and a guy walks past the table and looks at me and then literally stops and backs up. And he says, "You are Ron Marz." And I went, "Yup." And he went, "You write for CrossGen Comics?" Yes, I do. "You used to write Silver Surfer and Green Lantern at DC and Marvel?" That's correct. Yes, I do.
I'm aware of this. Yeah.
"You live at," and he gave me my address.
Whoa.
Damn.
Whoa.
And I went, "Huh." That's interesting. And so for the next literally 20 minutes, this guy told me stuff about myself. We didn't have a conversation per se. He just told me things about, you used to play volleyball with Jim Starlin and Bernie Wrightson. Correct.
Did he work for the CIA, or was he just on the spectrum and he had this weird memory for other people's lives?
More the second one than the first one.
I assumed as much.
So yeah, I definitely on the spectrum. Not in any way threatening.
Yeah,
but just like, yeah, you shouldn't know what my wife's name is. You shouldn't you shouldn't know how many dogs I have.
No, that would creep me out so bad. Okay, I wouldn't live at that address anymore after I got home. I'll tell you that. Honey, we're moving.
That's not weird. You just jumped into the realm of bizarre with that one. So
the guy just keeps going on, and our appetizers come, and we're trying to eat. We're like, okay, well, our food's here now. Thanks for stopping by.
But I know more details about you that I have to tell you.
Just keeps going.
Yeah.
Just
no social cues. Yeah.
Obviously those were all lost, and so just keeps going, and we get to like weird stuff, like what my old address used to be in Woodstock, New York, and just bizarre. And after a while, like I and my dinner companion, we just start laughing because it's so weird, and we're like in the middle of it, and he's not going away, and our entrees come, and we're eating, and he's just it goes on for like 20 minutes. And again, it's not a conversation, it's just him telling me things that he was certain
RON
I needed
Mars, this is your life.
He was certain that I needed to know.
Wow.
So about 20 minutes in, he goes, well, don't want to keep you, and just turned around and walked away.
Did he ever ask for an autograph or anything?
No. So that's and at the table right behind me was Terry Dotson and his wife Rachel.
Oh my Lord.
And we're just kind of stunned. And Terry turns around and says to me, that was so weird. We were getting ready to call the waitress. And I'm like, oh, you were getting ready to call the waitress?
As soon as we learned more about you.
Were you going to wait until he stabbed me in the neck? Or
wow, what a super creepy story. Oh my God.
So that is part one of the story.
Oh God, there's a part two.
There's a part two. As of a year and a half ago, there's a part two.
Oh no.
So I'm
dying to know.
I'm at a show in New Jersey. And I have been in the green room having a chat with Q, John Delancey.
Yeah, he was just here in town a couple of years ago.
About the relative merits of the cold cut plate. So get to with lunch. I come back to my table, sit down, and this guy appears in front of me with a. This was just at the end of the pandemic, so he's got a surgical mask on, and he looks at me and goes, "You are older now."
It's the same guy?
It's the same guy 20 years apart.
No way.
And he picks up
oh my God.
where he left off as if we had not stopped.
That's an incredible memory.
So he again starts in and starts telling me things that have happened in the ensuing years.
Wow.
And he says, you had a Labrador retriever when you were in Florida. Do you still have the Labrador retriever? And I said, well, no, that dog passed away. And he went, was it a chocolate lab or a golden lab? And I said, it was a black lab. And he went, ah.
Like he was testing you. He wanted to make sure you knew what kind of dog you had.
He said, amongst the things he said were, where he said, what is it like to be living the life of a writer? I think it must be lonely. And I said, nah, it's worked out pretty good for me. And he goes, you are an artist and you find your muse and you sculpt your muse, and then you have an affair and you get caught by your wife and you are divorced and your muse leaves you and you are alone and horrible. And I went, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, Pablo Picasso was a horrible man.
Okay.
Oh my God. Wow. My God, that's insane.
That is correct.
Now, what
that
are you
had to
going
be
to do?
so unsettling.
I have to ask this question. What are you going to do if you run into this guy in 20 more years and he says, I do not appreciate the imitation that you did of me that night on Shop Talk with Josh and Alan? We'll
sort that out when we get to it.
Yeah, holy smokes. That is just incredible.
Yeah, it was. And again, he knew way too much about my life. Yeah.
But you wrote your Wikipedia page, right? Is that
not in a, it was not in a threatening way. It was just kind of weird. The Pablo Picasso thing came out of nowhere. And finally he decides, okay, thank you, and just walked away again. And sitting next to me at the show.
Please tell me it was Terry and Rachel Dodson.
No, it was.
That would have been great.
It was Kevin Nolan.
Oh wow, yeah.
Who is a buddy, and the guy walks away, and Kevin looks at me slack-jawed and says, "Oh my God, what should I have done?"
What? You go all Venom and become Bane.
And I said,
he's not too far off from anyway. And
I said, "Kill me."
Kill me.
And Kevin says, no, seriously, that was so weird. What should I have done? I'm like, you have my phone number. Call me so I have an excuse to stop this conversation. Kevin's like, oh, that's a good idea next time. I'm like, oh, better not be next time.
Yeah, twice is enough. That's more than enough. Oh my Lord, that's hilarious. The bit where he was asking you about your dog just kind of reminded me of my nephew when he was really, really little. He got into comics, and he would ask me these questions that he knew the answer to. He knew I owned a comic book store, and he would ask me these questions to test me, right, and make sure he knew what I was talking about. So he goes, "What's Spider-Man's real name?" Peter Parker. And he's like, all right, that's correct. And you could see him mentally check the box. What's Iron Man's real name? Tony Stark. Okay, yeah, that's right. What's Captain America's real name? Steve Rogers. Okay, yeah, that. And then he started okay, he knows what he's talking about. I'm going to ask him some I don't know, right? So he goes, what's Hawkeye's real name? And I said, Clint Barton. And he goes, what kind of stupid name is that? He was not on board with Clint Barton. He's a little 3-year-old kid. What kind of stupid name is that?
Clint used to be the name that you could not put in a comic.
I can understand that.
Because in the days of regular newsprint comics, the lettering would often close up.
Yep.
And Clint was not a good name to put on a comic page that the ink might close up a little bit.
Yeah, no, that makes
sense. I don't understand. Please tell me what would happen.
You're just gonna, Alan, you're just gonna have to get a pen and paper and figure it out.
Oh Lord. Well, sir, I know we have kept you past your time. Thank you so very much for joining us. It has been an absolute treat talking to you. If you ever want to just shoot the breeze, we'd love to have you back on. We love talking comics. We love talking with the folks who create comics. And our folks always, I notice that our folks tend to support better the creators that they've heard from. It feels like they know them. They want to support them. And so your next comic you've got coming up is, I think, comes out in 3 weeks, which is Green Lantern. I think the actual number is 33, but the legacy number is 600.
Yeah, I don't know what the actual number is, but I just know it's 600. So
yeah,
yeah, Daryl and I have a story in there that we're both very happy with the way it came out. And it's nice to go back and get our hands on Kyle again. It's like I said, when you do work for hire, it's not yours.
Yep.
But Kyle is sort of in that middle ground of, yeah, we know it's not ours, but you still feel very attached to the character because we made him up, and to a large extent he is what he is because of what we did with him. So 100%. Anytime there's a chance to go back and play in that playground again, it's always great.
Well, I'm really looking forward to reading it. We definitely increased our orders for sure because we knew that you had a story in there. Make it down to Huntsville and we won't stalk you too much.
Yeah, let's make that happen. I like I said, I think I've got to 46 out of 50 states, so got a few more to check off.
Well, we'll make sure and feed you real good too, because you can't tell because you can't see all of me, but I know where the good restaurants are.
Follow you?
Oh yeah, I had a guy one time. There was a work thing, and I popped into a colleague's office to say, "Hey, do you want to go to lunch?" And I didn't realize that she had a customer here from somewhere else, right? And I said, "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to bother you." And he was like, "No, it's lunchtime." And she said, "Well, Mike, where do you want to go?" And he looked at me. We had never met before, mind you. He looked at me and he looked at her and he looked back at me and he said, "Wherever he goes." And that was a wise decision.
Well, let's make that happen. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's been great talking with you, and we definitely look forward to doing it again. I don't care what Joe Pruitt says.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.
All right. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off. We've had an awesome evening tonight with the one and only Ron Marz joining us. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you're watching this later, which I know a lot of you do, I hope you had a good time. Sorry you couldn't join and ask some questions live and in person, but pick up Green Lantern 300. And if we all are 600 rather, and if we all really behave, maybe he and Luke Ross will do the Kickstarter thing like Mike Grell is doing with John Sable, just saying. We'll get some more Samurai Heaven and Earth. A high pressure campaign might do that, folks. Anyway, thank you guys, and we will catch y'all next time.